And I'd like to welcome Sharon Hughes from BASF, who is going to be talking to us about the challenges of pest control on dairy and livestock farms.
Right, morning everybody. So let me just share my screen. Is that up and going, everybody? Everybody see it?
Yeah, looks good.
Brilliant. Okie dokie. So let's get going. So challenges of rural pest control on livestock farms. So I will, me being me, rodent person, this will be focused on rodents. So if I start really by a bit of an introduction as the objective, I mean, what are we doing, what and why? So for our pest control, obviously we're there to protect everything that's on that farm, from any stored harvest or stored food that's on there. I mean, a lot of the livestock are also arable mixed as well. The other thing is to protect the livestock with regards to food conversion. So what the animals eat and the amount of meat that they produce, if they're stressed due to disease or due to the presence of pests, then that reduces that food conversion, and the livestock farmer then gets less money. And then there's the damage to buildings, and obviously ultimately your business if the farmer, the livestock producer is not happy. And then linked to this obviously then is biosecurity. So for biosecurity, we're trying to stop disease getting in. Then if it does happen to get in via the pests, we're then trying to stop it spreading. And then after that, we're then trying to stop it leaving. And all that is to protect the animals, the workers, whether the animals be the livestock or other non-targets. And then ultimately then also the quality of the food that they're producing. So the purpose of all this is obviously we want to understand the biology and behavior of our pests, and we're trying to eliminate as much as possible what makes this environment attractive to the pests. If we can't eliminate, then we're looking at monitoring and then controlling quickly and effectively. So how are we going to do this? If we look at I would just want to go through 4 aspects really: the site, the seasons and cycles, the actual control, and then the farmer and the customer. So just in this kind of 30 minutes or so, just a brief on each of those. So if we look at the site, to start off with, we're going to do our risk hierarchy. Again, following our crew, Think Wildlife, we're going to have our environmental and site risk assessment. We're going to look at proofing, obviously removing food and water, harbourages, non-chemical control, and then chemical control. And then hand in hand in that, and it's almost identical in many ways, is we've got the integrated pest management. We've got the monitoring, habitat manipulation, which comes into proofing, removing the food and water. I put rodent proofing for that. And then the rodent control. Now, the thing is with livestock farms is that it's virtually impossible to remove the food and water to a level that the rats or the mice can't actually access it, because obviously it needs to be there for the livestock. And then similar with harbourages, it's difficult to remove all harbourages, because at the end of the day, if you take for poultry and for swine, and to some extent cattle, and definitely for dairy, then they have the premises, the buildings that they actually live on. So that's going to be really difficult. But I mean, I will show you some slides where the removing harbourages is definitely something that could be addressed along with proofing. So that's the challenge, in the fact that a lot of the things that we'd like to do under the risk hierarchy in our IPM are very, very difficult to do. So if we look at eliminating and reducing, if we take in, for example, feed, We've already, like we said, we've got animal feed on site. We've got any stored grain or crop that might be, if they're also arable. And then also, unfortunately, as a source of food could be the animals themselves. We can't eliminate water. We can try and restrict these things and harbourages. And also, the other thing that we can't eliminate is non-targets, because that's what's actually on the farm. If we take a look at the photograph on the right-hand side, so here the farmer has put the grain into tote bags, raised them off the floor, each on a pallet. So all good things. But then rats have been in, nibbled the corners, some of the grain has spilt, and it's just been left. So now that totally negates the grain been in the totes and slightly raised. So again, it's communication with the farmer. It's keeping on top of things so that that's then cleaned up to then make that environment less attractive, to try and eliminate, if you like, and reduce. And if they won't do it or can't do it because of time, then maybe it's a service that pest controllers could offer as well. Again, these are just 2 slides. The left-hand side, we can see we've got the kind of the dung heap on the right-hand side and the cattle feed on the left. It's left kind of more or less open because he just wants to drive his digger in, scoop the feed up and take it. Now that gets refilled every couple of weeks, so he is using it. But in the meantime, it's wide open, obviously, to be attacked by rats and mice. So perfect environment. And then the left-hand side, we can see we've got cattle, we've got the troughs there. There's nothing we can do about them. We can't eliminate, we can't reduce. You can see we've just got our control points underneath that. So very difficult and challenging with the things that are there, that have to be there for the livestock. Again, this is a broiler unit on the left-hand side, and we can see all the little vessels, the red little cap things that have all the feed and the water there for the chicks. There's nothing we can do about that. It's also a warm environment. It's contained. And then unfortunately here as well, you've got the chicks as a food source. Similarly, a swine, I mean, that's a little bit more open. But again, the food, the water, the harbourages, that's all there. And what we need to do is control the rodents, rats or mice, before they even get to this stage, before they get near to the animals. And that helps reduce the disease, the spreading of disease and the damage. And again, this is, like I said, I mean, it's not just the smaller animals like the chickens that rats will go for. Here's quite a large chicken and it's been attacked by the rats. So quite sad, but again, we have to try and avoid this at all costs. So if we look at now trying to eliminate harbourages, I mean, these are pictures, they're not that old. So we look at the top left, a new cow shed was being built, and that's the rubble, the remains from it all. But that's been there for about 18 months. And the rats have made burrows into that, and you can see there's the stream. So right in that pitch, we've got water, we've got harbourage, and then at the back, the cattle shed, we've got food. So trying to tackle this, trying to reduce and eliminate, it's a massive problem. Again, I'm sure many of you have seen this on farms, just the gathering of rubbish that needn't be there, that's probably there for a rainy day, and then the foliage grows over it, and now it's doubly protected as a source of harbourage for the rodents. The bottom right, the photograph, to the right of all that greenery we see is a stream. We've got all that greenery, which is about 2 foot high, and then on the left is the cattle shed. So again, we've got everything that the rat needs to move from like outside right into the inside and access to the animals. So challenging, but all that needs, it take half an hour to cut all that foliage back, and then we can see what's going on. And I'd ask the farmer, or again, maybe try and do it ourselves. And proofing, this is another challenge. So this is on the left. It's difficult to do. Proofing can be done, but it's keeping on top of it. And that's even more of a challenge in rural hygiene, because obviously you've got the impact of the animals, especially the larger animals, cattle, dairy cattle, and the pigs. So on the left, it's a hole kicked into a wall. I mean, I'm not saying the wall was in the best condition to begin with. And that's been there at least 18 months. So there's access for the rodents now. If we look at the picture on the right-hand side, what we have here is obviously we've got the pigs in each of them pens. I mean, that's really difficult to proof. And also the wall that's there, that's as far as we can go. If we were using bait, that's as far as we can go. Everything inside of that then that the pigs would have access to. But also on top of that, remember I was saying about the biosecurity, beyond that wall, it's a biosecurity risk. So while we were working on this farm, we actually weren't allowed past the wall, if you like, not even to put traps down, because there were no places really where we could safely put the bait. So when we were placing the control mechanisms, and we use bait on this, we had to look at that kind of, and obviously the wall went around on 4 sides. We had to look at each bait point that it was servicing anything that was outside and anything, the rats that were inside. So that impacted, do we need a bait point here for the outside? Maybe not, but let's cover it for the inside there as well. So that impacted where we were putting our bait points. So again, it's been aware of the issues. So the challenge now, we were saying that we can't remove the food, water and harbourages. We can try and reduce them, we can try and make it cleaner, tidier, but we're not going to be able to eliminate these. So even more so now, monitoring is really important, because that's how you'll know if your infestation has started. So you're going to do a massive inspection, monitoring when you start the IPM program, and then it needs regular inspections. And for this type of challenging environment, the frequency of visits, I think, can't be the same as it is for urban, because we've already seen that this is far more challenging with what's available. And you've also got the openness. So the up for migration onto your site at any point, because these are obviously out in the open, and other farms, other locations in a rural environment have probably got rodents. So look at how frequent your visits need to be, given that this is such a challenging environment. And I think like the standard 6 to 8 weeks, again, it needs to be far tighter than that. But that's obviously something that needs explaining and discussing with the farmer. And then the other thing, and I kind of put this down and took it off and put it back on again, is kind of establishment of thresholds. On some of these farms, you will never, I'm not saying don't aim for elimination, because we do, but we will probably never get to elimination. So while we don't want to say to the farmer, yeah, we accept there will be a certain level, I think within ourselves, we've got to face the facts that it's going to be very difficult to get complete elimination across the whole site for rodents. But like I say, it doesn't mean we can't aim for that. But what's practical? But what we need to do as well is that the farmer needs to tell us, and I know that's us being reactive as well as proactive. I mean, we need to be proactive with our visits, with our monitoring, with the IPM, but also we need to be proactive as well, reactive as well, in the fact that if there is signs of rodents, we need to get on there quickly, because an infestation can get hold in this type of challenging environment really quickly, whether it's rats or mice. So another thing I want to talk about is the seasons and cycles. So what do I mean by this? So this is just the seasons of the year. So if we take autumn, for example, we got our crops are going to be harvested. So therefore, the rats living in the field, they've then lost the harbourages with regards to the crop. And then the food's moved inside, the crops move inside, and that's where the food is. So they're going to follow that. Winter, they're going to continue to stay indoors. And then now spring, they're starting to breed, and then they can move back out into the fields. Now, that cycle, which the farmers adhere to, also it's local conditions as well. So what happens if there's suddenly a freeze snap and that the rodents move in? So we need to communicate. We need to know the local areas. We need the farmer to communicate. We need to know weather conditions. And this is why it's all challenging. And also, so if the farmer's going to harvest the field next to it, we need to know that. Because if you go on, say, 6 to 8 weeks, and the day after you go, he then harvests the crop, or his neighbour harvests the fields, then those rats have lost their food and their harbourage source, those that are in the field. But you're not going to be going there for 6 to 8 weeks. Then by the time you do go, that infestation would have got a hold of. So again, it's communication to knowing exactly what's going on. So this is an example. So each of them kind of bays would have took a kind of a decent sized van. And we were doing a trial and we were all kind of parked along there. Now we knew we had a couple of days warning that this was going to happen, harvest the field, and that's where they put the grain. So this is right in the middle of a treatment. So it massively impacts now. So the rats move from the fields onto this and look at all the available food. So in the middle of a baiting program, the whole dynamics of the site changes because now there's all this readily available food for rats and mice. No attempt to put it in any type of containers or anything, just kind of tons of it. So, but at least we knew, and at least we were prepared that this is what they tried to talk them out of it. We were prepared for this is what was going to happen. So again, we knew straight away that now there'd be an influx of rats onto this site. So again, it's knowing that the cycles, not just the seasonal, but what the farmer's doing. And along with the cycles, you've got things like, for example, in a broiler unit there. So where the chicks are brought in, typically 4 to 7 weeks later after they're bred up, they're sent for slaughter for meat. And then the whole shed is cleaned. So it's kind of an all in, all out. And the cleaning is normally a week. So you've got a week's window to get in there and treat for rodent and any insect infestations that are there. And then chicks are brought back in again. It's all cleaned, all sanitized, chicks are brought back in. I mean, sometimes it's only into half the shed because they're a lot smaller, so to keep them together a bit more for don't lose as much body weight, cheaper to heat, and you might have the other half to work on, but generally it's a week's window. So again, you need to be doing everything you can and you've just got that week. So again, it's cycles that you need to be aware of. And then the other one is for cattle and sheep, the likes of the livestock manager moving the cattle around. I mean, we were doing a trial. We had bait points at the back of a cattle shed in the field. And then next time we go, he'd moved there was some cattle that were sick and he'd moved them into the field. So it was just unaccessible because they weren't well in the first place and it wasn't safe as pest controllers, but there was the bait points then. And we didn't know what was going on. So again, just maybe ask it, again, it's communication. If he needs to put them in the field, just give you a ring and say, look, I'm putting cattle or whatever, or sheep in that field and you've got your bait points. So then we can decide, do we need to move them or are they inaccessible? So to the livestock. So now I want to just talk about control. So again, I've said I think rural is arguably more difficult than urban because I think definitely for the rats, they are, I think, harder to control. They have this kind of enhanced neophobia. We've got resistance, and then obviously we've got non-targets. There's nothing we can do about the non-targets we know there, let alone the domestic animals and the wildlife that surrounds any rural livestock farm. So the challenges for neophobia. As trained professionals, we know that rats have difficulty in bait boxes. My worst one was a farm, 15 weeks to go in the bait box, 100 bait boxes, because it was quite a decent infestation, high hundreds, nearly 1,000, 100 bait boxes, and 15 weeks before they went in. So we had no bait in them. There was no point. You could see by the mud prints through the bait boxes, there was nothing in them. But it was a study on the bait boxes, really. So I didn't want to go covered and protected for them. But for trained professionals, you can go covered and protectives. And that means using local material. And you've seen from other the slides on farms, there are, even livestock farms, there's always something that you can use to make a covered and protected bait station. And what we find is, because that's material that's there, it's not new, that the neophobia for the rats is significantly reduced, if not reduced completely. So we want to make something that it's not only a rat can get in, like nothing larger than the rat can get in. Smaller mammals, they can get into the tamper-resistant that we've got. So it's preventing smaller mammals like your field voles and your wood mice. That's more about where you place your bait point, which comes down to your risk assessment. If you know in your risk assessment that you've got these non-targets, the field voles, the wood mice, then you don't bait out in the perimeter. You bait nearer to the building where they're less likely to be. So you try and work as best you can, best practice, to try and eliminate that. And bearing in mind, there's no label, there's no product, rodenticide bait approved for wood mice or field mice. And also, even if you're trapping, if in these controls you don't put bait, you put traps, again, you don't want to be trapping these non-targets. And tamper-resistant bait boxes, they're necessary where you've got kind of public access. So we can use our covered and protected. So this is just an example. So it's a long tube pipe, and bait's tied on it on a bit of wire, tied to the top. The top one has the tube held in kind of like a U-shaped wire. I don't know what it's called, like a big upside down hook thing that's holding it in. And the bottom one that has it there's a big slab of concrete holding that one in place. No matter which way you do it, they're labelled. So here I've labelled, the tube's labelled, the slab could be labelled, that wall just behind it could be labelled, but the bait point has to be labelled as if it was on a tamper-resistant bait box. And the tube has to be kind of a decent length, so you're trying to stop, rats, so nothing bigger than a rat can get in. It's going to be secured, so it can't be knocked about. And also it has to be long enough to try and, the guidelines, the recommendations is to prevent long-necked birds getting in, so swans and things like that. So that's an example. This is other examples that we've used. So securing bait onto that's just a plastic bait tray with wire. And then again, this is on the farm that has many harbourages. Rats are living and burrowing under all that wood pile. So that bait tray goes right in there at arm's length, as far as we can, right under all of that, where all the rats are living. Now, the fact that rats are living there, that in itself will put off non-targets, the field mice, the wood mice. The one on the right, we can see it's going in, I must admit, it looks like some type of ducting. Bait tray right under there, and then that piece of wood goes over that you can see just under his arm, up against it, and that is covered and protected. So the next thing, so that helps negate the effect of the neophobia. The next thing I want to talk about is resistance. So I just want to mention, if you'll go on the Rodenticide Resistance Action Committee website, because we know resistance in rural areas occurs, probably in rats more so in rural than in urban. So if you go on this website and you can download the little QR code onto your phone, and then it's for, at the moment, Android only, Apple to follow, and this is what you can get. So you can tap in where you are. There's also a little kind of checklist. Have you got this? Have you got that? Where are you? What you're using? And it'll come to like a little conclusion for you at the end, just straightforward. Little checklist, and you can get this type of map up, and that'll tell you. So I've got the UK brown rats. You have to tap in your country and tap in what species you want. But there we are, UK brown rats, and there's our resistance map. And you can drill down on that a little bit further. You can get it by date and things like that. So you could, and that's all on your phone. So if you've got, if you're using bait and you've got issues or concerns, then you can use this. Another challenge that we've got for rural is we know that vitamin K1 is the antidote to anticoagulant poisoning. So that's, yeah. But vitamin K3 is added to animal feed as a supplement. Now, there's work being done on it a while ago as well, so that this enhances survival and selection of resistant rats, just resistant rats. Nothing. So if they're anticoagulant susceptible, so if anticoagulant kills them anyway, then this vitamin K3 makes no difference. But for anticoagulant susceptible, we've got this, it enhances their survival. So a bit of a selection for them as well. So that's another problem. This problem isn't as bad now that nobody's allowed to get the liquid concentrate and mix it with the animal feed, which is what used to be practices a long time ago to help, again, neophobic reaction of the rats, so to increase the take. So this isn't as big as a problem as it used to be, but it's still there. So in our animal feed, we've still got that. So again, another challenge. So again, now this impacts even more. So we need to get our bait in place, or our trap, whatever we're using, our control mechanism in place before they get to the feed. So even more so now. So, and I'll come on to that in a few more slides. And then the other problem for control is non-targets. We know we can't eliminate them. You've got the livestock, you've got the wildlife that come with any in this situation. So if, for example, a non-target consumes for bait, for example, then that's primary poisoning. If they're accidentally trapped, then obviously that's still killing a primary non-target. And consumption of poisoned, if our animal non-target consumes a poisoned dead rodent, then that class as secondary poisoning. So everything we do has got to try and eliminate as much as possible this, whether it's bait or trapping. And again, that's down to placement, location. So to protect non-targets in our control, the bait station, so whether it's got bait or whether it's got our trap in it, it can be your bait station or covered and protected. Covered and protected could be used for both. And I've just been doing work with traps and bait, and I've used both. Again, coming down to the placement, we want the bait placement or the trap placement to be along the rat runs where we're less likely to get our field voles, etc., and as near to the burrow as possible. So either burrow bait or as near to that burrow in your bait box or your covered and protected. Bait stations in the open obviously are going to appeal more to these field mice, etc., and they're what our raptors and our barn owls are going to feed on. So we need to make sure that the bait placement or the trap placement is as rat friendly when we're out in the open as possible, and as non-target kind of dish friendly, whatever the is, as possible. And again, in your site survey, like I said before, if you find that you've got these non-targets, the field voles, the wood mice, then you have to do your control measure nearer to the building. And we look at the like I say, the picture on the left-hand side. That's everything in that pen we couldn't access because of biosecurity. So we had to do everything around the building and as far away from the building as we could to, but make sure we weren't damaging non-targets. So the control of non-targets. So on our product labels, and these are kind of European-wide phrases, it says to reduce the risk of secondary poisoning. So this is for when our non-target eats the dead or dying rodent, visit at frequent intervals. And that's up to you now to decide what frequent intervals is. But I'm going to say in this type of environment, again, you can't put bait down and come back in the 6 weeks. For me, frequent, I mean, I do every other day, but definitely no less than a week, I think. For trapping, like we say, we know open traps should never be used outside of a box in open areas. They should be in a suitable tunnel or box. And the frequency of trap checking, this is from the BPCA, should be in line with your site visits. But interestingly, UFO, which is an animal welfare federation, which they spoke at PestX, they suggest at least twice a day. And this is in case something is caught but not killed. So it's caught by the leg or something like that. So it's in pain, it's in stress. But they're suggesting twice a day, but, and it is a big but, they accept that the welfare advantages of these twice a day, it can't be realistically done in practice. So it's a bit of a, yeah, it's about, because in effect, nobody can afford to go to a site twice a day, really. So that's just, again, these are challenges that we have no matter which control method that we're using. So again, I just want to put this slide up, not kind of a commercial, but to show you the different projects have different things on the label that will help you in these challenging environments. So we've got indoors and around buildings. Now, that takes you as far as you need to go distance-wise to control the infestation that's affecting your building. So if you've got rats living in burrows 50, 150, 200 meters away, but they're coming into your livestock building to feed, to drink, then you're allowed to control them. And that's what in and around covers. And I think that's quite a pragmatic answer. Then we've got covered and protected, which again, for trained professionals, which we've explained. There's burrow baiting, open areas don't apply. And then the other thing is permanent baiting. Can you permanent bait? If you eliminate your infestation of rodents, but there's a high risk area and you just know that they're going to come back in through that area because there's some environmental impact just outside and you know this is going to happen, then you're allowed to permanent bait. So these are kind of tools, but read the label, not all of the same, even with the same active, not all of the same. So read that. And then that gives you a lot of scope and a lot of different areas we can use to tackle. So that's for baiting. So for our control, like I mentioned, if we think of it in zones, whether we're doing whichever method of control we're doing, we've got the outer zones. That's where the rats are. If we take rats, they're going to be in the burrows. And then we get to the middle zone, which is the outskirts of the livestock building. And then we get the inner zone, which is where the actual livestock are. And if the rats start out on the outside, in their burrows, in all them harbourages that we've seen, if we can control them through our frequent monitoring, then we save them going to the middle zone and definitely then save them kind of, because once they're in the middle zone, that's just an access to get into the food. So we have to kind of try and control more from the outside because the nearer we get to the animals, definitely the less bait we can use. And sometimes, like I say, for biosecurity or for access, the inner zone, that there's not much you can do. So that's kind of a zonal structure approach to it. So this is just examples. There's our cattle on the left-hand side, and there's the bank where the rodents were living in the burrow holes. We can see the middle zone, like we say, that's where they're moving in now, and that's why we've got these bait stations underneath the cattle there to try and intercept them before they actually go in. And that's the purpose of that. We know where they're trying to get to, and can we intercept them? And the nearer we can intercept them, then the better the life, and the less likely the disease, and the less damage will be done to the livestock farmer. And then, like I said, the inner zone, now we've got, it can be often, there's nothing you can do. You can't eliminate the food. You can't eliminate the water. If they can get in the structure between walls, I mean, we've got two fine layers of walls. Mice can get in the ceiling, rats can get in the ceiling. It's really difficult once they're in. Really, you're kind of moving your animals out while you attack an area. And here, monitoring and sanitation and IPM in the inner zone, they're key. And then the last couple of slides I want to talk about is the farmer or the customer. So communication is essential. You've got to know what he's doing when he's doing it. You've got to keep pushing habitat manipulation, the proofing, the hygiene, everything. And maybe, like I say, offers it as part of the service. Maybe offer pest awareness training so that they can tell you the minute, instead of the minute they actually see a rat, the minute they see damage or a burrow hole. They've not seen the rat, because quite often you say, we've got rats. Yeah, there's a couple running in the yard in the day. And you know by that point that there's more than 1, 2, 5, 10, 20. So maybe pest awareness training, that would help get on top of this before it becomes a problem. And then it's helping them to help us to kind of help them, isn't it? But again, I appreciate that that's a challenge, because it's cost, it's money, but I think you really need that really good relationship. And then my last slide is we're kind of out there in the country, and just for front and foremost is the crew. Code of conduct, or your alwayses and your nevers, your 7-point code. Okay, so I think that's my last slide. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Sharon. That was fantastic. I think one of the things that I have a lot of discussions around when it comes to farms is that customer expectation. Yes. Managing that customer expectation. And it's changed slightly. I lived on a farm for 5 years, and it's changed quite a lot over the last sort of 5 or 10 years in how it's approached now. Managing them expectations is a key point.
Yeah, and I find it's very different. You've got farms. I mean, I literally in this day and age, we've been on farms with close to 2,000 rats, and then you've been on farms that are just seeing kind of literally what you want the minute they think they've got that you're on. So that for me, there's still a massive, and I think maybe that comes to wealth of the farmer, the livestock farmer. Can they afford your time and effort? But in the end of the day, when they're near over 1,000, then it's a massive investment for them, because now it's a lot of hard work. But I think there's a massive difference as well. Scale.
Yeah. Just got a few questions. Tony asks, do rats spread or carry TB?
Do you know what? I had a slide on it, and I don't know. Let me get back to you. I can't remember if TB was on my slide. I think not. My gut thing is no, but let me get back to that on that.
I think the farmer we used to live on, the farmer used to joke that his cat was more of a problem than most things.
Yeah. I'm going to gut thing is no, but I don't want to say no without me list in front of me, but I think no.
Question from Ian, just about food pellets. Could they change the sort of when the feeding times and things on farms to prevent that food being in barns, or prevent it being spilt on the floor, as it were?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think the feeding times. I mean, what you get with the feed, and the same with the milking times. The rats come out. I mean, I've been on a milking parlour, and as the milk's spilt, the rats come out. because they spilt milk. Do you know what I mean? So it's, for that side of it, it's sanitation as you're going along. But yeah, the feeding times, and I think that's the biggest problem. Like I say, that was just open. He wants it like that because he just drives his digger in and that's how he works. And how do you say to him, put that in tote bags and then put that, do you know what I mean, and put them out the way, and then he has to tip the tote bag. So, but yeah, and it's working with the farm again. It's seeing what's the best practice and what's the practical practice, and in between, there's got to be somewhere that, while won't solve all the problems, will help reduce them. So I think elimination is very difficult, but let's try and reduce. And it's, like I say, it's what he wants to do and what you think's best, and it's meeting in the middle, or as near to us as we can get, as far as we can push him towards us as we can get.
And he had a sort of second part to his question. With the complexity of treating farms and the procedures in place, it's about the farm assurance and why farmers are still able to buy like their own rodenticides and things. And
I expected this. I mean, farmers still have to be trained. I mean, they still have to take the necessary training, and there's ongoing. I mean, us as a company, we're continuing with, even when they've got the certificate, we continue with the training. So we still take responsibility, and we still are aware that they go on the course. And do they know everything like we know everything? Let's be honest, and the answer is no. So we still continue, because with all like the wildlife things still going on, we still want to keep them as and to be fair, I'm going to say the more aware now that they've got more responsibility, and that they have to. But yeah, so I think more than us, but other people are carrying on with once they've got the certificate and been online, carrying on training them. But yeah,
I think that support network is key.
Yes,
we can't just give them stuff; we have to support them with it, and try and help them in the use of it as well, so that it's
that's it. Yeah.
About the covered and protected bait stations, are there pre-printed cilantro labels available on that pipe? I think there was a pre-printed cilantro label. Are they available for the boxes, or?
I'll let me check. They might have been ones that were put together, but I'll speak to Helen, who's on after, and we can let you know, and we can get back to you, or maybe that's something we could do. Like I said, Killgerm, we work with Killgerm, so I'll speak to Helen and Killgerm, and I can get back.
Norman asks about terrier treatments. Is it recommended to do more physical treatments rather than using sort of chemical treatments like terriers or shooting maybe on farms?
Definitely, I'm going to say if you go onto a farm, and you've got hundreds, quite a lot of the pest controllers will shoot for the first night just to try and get on top of it. For me, shooting and terriers, it's okay for if you have a relatively small infestation, but I would always back that up with something as well. Obviously, they've got there in the first place, so you've got some type of IPM, some type of all that to look at as to why and how. But yes, they are. I mean, everything's out there, but I mean, I don't know if they'd work but anywhere. For me, on a farmer, to pound a farm with 300 rats is nothing. I mean, they're kind of not 10 a penny, but it's quite thingy. So that's a lot. But if there was a new infestation under 10, under 20, maybe,
Yeah, I think depending on the farm as well, with the location of the rats and things.
That's it,
dogs and things.
That's it. And also for shooting, I mean, some animals might not be. I mean, that might not be. I don't mean they know what shooting is. I just mean the noise of it. I mean, it's yeah.
Good stuff. There are a couple more questions if you'd like to just drop into the Q&A section and just answer by typing them out. That would be perfect.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.